Welcome back to RGR Craft. We are going to go over something new and different for you guys. Those of you who are not experienced brewers, I've gotten a lot of questions about, hey, just knock it down, make it dumb. Tell me about the basics of getting into brewing for somebody that's new and hasn't done it. So my buddy Mike Bunhall is back. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm here. I'm drinking. So salute to everyone watching. For those of you that are new to brewing, we're going to break it down. I have had a video in the past that I walked through the whole process of going grain to water to mash to boil to brew. That is the whole process. But we're going to give you some tips and tricks from our experience and what we've gone through as brewers to kind of get you off on the right chart, the right path. And then there's a million questions that come from that. So I'm not going to lead this one actually today, Mike, because I know you have better ideas than I do in terms of getting back to basics. So what's the first thing that you tell somebody when they're like, hey, I'd like to try brewing at home?
Well, if future Mike were to go to past Mike, my first brew day, the thing that I would bring with me was it's kind of hokey now, but Charlie Papazian's mantra of relax, don't worry, have a home brew. Kind of hokey, but really it holds true, right? When you're starting out brewing, there's all sorts of stuff that are just going to go wrong. There's very rarely ever a brew day that you just nail it, right? The dog's going to come up and sneeze in your kettle, or you're going to drop your peanut butter sandwich in your fermenter. I don't know, something's going to happen, right? But really, it doesn't matter. We're not saving the world. We're just making beer, right? Whatever happened on your brew day or to your beer, chances are it's going to be just fine, right? Yeah. So, so fish that peanut butter sandwich out of your fermenter, or, boil an extra 10 minutes if your dog, spit a big loogie in your boil kettle, whatever it is.
But just don't share that with me.
Right. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to have some creative names for your beer now, right?
There you go.
So, that would be number 5, right? I got a little mix of philosophical and practical tips here, but as cheesy as that saying is now, when it still applies, right? Things are going to go wrong. Don't worry about it. Your beer is going to be fine.
Yeah. And, and I've updated, I call it STFU and have a home brew. That's just the way that I work. Because no matter what happens, I end up cussing at something most brew days.
Right.
But the one that I would say that kind of feeds into that is that, listen, no matter what you do, you can't really kill it. It's like pizza. It's still going to be beer in the end. It might not taste the way that you wanted it to, but it's not the end of the world. Take your little hiccups as areas to improve or unique things that you run into.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That happened, honestly, with my first brew day ever. My first brew day back in 1993 with my roommate at the time who was brewing at Free State in Lawrence, Kansas. We decided to make a chili beer. We decided not to take the seeds out of the jalapenos. And when I drank that, it was the end of my taste buds for about a month.
Right.
It was bad.
Yeah, right. So the similar thing happened to, something happens on every single brew day. It's inevitable, right? Yep. You just got to roll with it and figure out how to fix the problem that you're in at that time, right? So Chris and I were brewing, our friend Chris. We're brewing last weekend, and he was brewing on my grandfather for the first time, just giving it a try. And of course, I inevitably messed everything up by pushing the mash screen in a little bit hard, and all the tubing and everything came completely apart. Everything just, the mash screen got pushed in, the tubing went all over the place, and we ended up spending 15 minutes fishing out a bunch of parts in the mash with a wrench. And in the end, we got it back together and everything was fine, but you just have to adapt and roll with it, right? That's kind of extreme, right?
Quick tip, folks, if you happen to have that happen, I use a magnetic parts grabber that you can get at Riley Auto Parts, and it's just got a big magnet on it that you can pick stuff out of the mash.
That's a good idea. It's a really good idea.
It works.
Yep. DIY. That's what we're doing.
That's the concept, right? That's what Home Brew is.
Yep.
for me, probably more than a lot of average people that start and just want something that works. I had to go mess with everything from the beginning, thanks to having you and your base brew system that I could start with.
That's
So
right.
when you talk about another beginner, I know you have a list. What's number 4 on your list?
For me, it's drink the beer you like and make the beer that you're going to drink. Right. If you're not into IPAs, don't get a kit of an IPA. Right. Drink the beer that you're going to like. Right. That's going to make brewing a lot more enjoyable for you. You don't have to follow trends. The funnest thing for me when I was starting out and still today is when I find a beer that I like, find out how it's made, research the style a little bit. Right. Find some recipes. That's part of the fun of it. Right. And especially like on your very first batch of beer, you want to have something to look forward to. If you're not looking forward to drinking that IPA, if you don't like IPAs, and don't do that, right? So make the beer that you like, that you want to drink.
I agree with you completely. And I always take a beer that you really, really like. What's your favorite beer? Replicate that and add something that is you. Sure. That's what I always try to do, because I'm never happy with anything, to tell you the truth. In fact, the first beer that you and I made together was a black IPA, because I was so into black IPA at the time. And despite my inability to hold on to things, we'll talk about that in another show. Just the fact that it was a complex black IPA that had to be dry hopped with whole cone after the fact in carboys, it was a lot to take from the first thing. So my next one is keep it simple. Make the beer that you want, but don't go overboard. The point is to get something that you want to drink.
Yeah, absolutely. Simple is really important, especially when you're starting out, right? Not a whole lot of people made a sour for their first beer, or a barrel aged, whatever. But yeah, keeping it simple is great. There's nothing wrong with starting with a kit either, right? It's your very first batch, or, third or fourth, whatever it is. But yeah, simple is really important as well. You're absolutely right with that.
So sidetrack real quick. If you were going to tell somebody who's interested in beginning to homebrew, especially with COVID and everything that's been going on with it, I've had a lot of interest in, hey man, how do I get started? And people generally find kits, especially extract kits, and want to know how to use that. And I don't know what to tell them, because I haven't gone extract. And I tell them what I've seen of it, because it is a nice way to pump up your gravity or whatever, should you need to. But I keep coming back to telling folks, don't be scared of going to all grain right off the bat. It's just grain. It's the way it all began. Going to like DME or liquid is just a shortcut that's been developed after the fact. People in the abbeys in the 1300s made stuff from full grain.
I'm opinionated here, and might have a little bit of a different opinion than yours. But you know what? If you understand the brewing process well enough before your very first batch of beer, go for it. Make an all grain batch of beer. But for 90% of us, we don't have the equipment. You don't have the knowledge. There's absolutely nothing wrong with starting out, again, really simple, right? In fact, this is one of my tips, is probably the opposite of yours. You can spend $50, $100 to get all the equipment you need to do a 2-gallon batch of extract, an extract recipe, or a kit right in your kitchen, right? I find nothing wrong with that. In fact, I would recommend people start that way. You can still make good beer. You don't have a whole lot of control over the process and your ingredients and stuff, because you're getting it all in a kit and it's extract. You're not learning the entire end-to-end process, but you're getting started, and you have to start somewhere. There's not a whole lot of people started out with a $3,000 rims and came out of their first brew day on the other end saying that was awesome, right? Start simple, but make an extract batch in your kitchen. It's 4 weeks from your brew day to drinking, practically. So yeah, I would recommend people just to start simple, spend $100 on some really basic equipment, and just brew in your kitchen and see how you like it, right?
And it makes the house smell nice. And for those of you that are thinking,
true.
hey, I don't know how to brew, what are you talking about? Extract is pre-boiled wort, basically. Taking the grain, getting the starches out of it, and getting it into a liquid form that is very much thickened. It comes out like a paste or a molasses or that kind of thing that you then thin out with water. It's predetermined for you, like how dark it's going to be, what the base grain was, and base grains do affect flavor. So some of that is a shortcut, but again, like Mike said, it gets you down the road without having to take all of those things into consideration. And for folks that have a 2-gallon pot on their stove, it certainly works just fine.
Yeah, and there's a natural progression, right? You start with like the most basic 2-gallon batch, complete kit. You put everything in there. You boil it for 10 minutes. Put it in a fermenter. I started with Mr. Beer. Remember Mr. Beer?
Mm-hmm.
2-gallon, everything came together.
Yep.
Nothing wrong with that, right? But there's a natural progression. You can start with an extract kit, and then work on staying in your kitchen, but like soaking some grains and adding some extracts, so you get a little bit more control over the flavor and what and the beer that you're actually making. And then work your way up towards an all-grain batch of beer. Right?
Yeah,
that's a pretty typical way to approach brewing, as a new brewer. And then you can also upgrade and add equipment as you go, as you figure out whether or not you're going to like brewing. And it certainly is a more cost-effective way of brewing, not having to buy all of your equipment all up front.
Yes, if you're somebody that likes alcohol, it's also a much more efficient way to actually ingest alcohol because of the cost of brewing your own versus buying what now is in shorter supply than it used to be, specifically if you want craft beer rather than macro beer like Budweiser and Coors. It's definitely got a cost efficiency thing to it as well, and I think that's important. But I want to pause for a second before we go too far, because I haven't even told you, and I'm almost out. Today's beer for me was a triple that I made a couple weeks ago. What are you drinking?
This is a double Citra IPA. I called it the Hot Baby Citra.
I like that.
Baby Citra, Hot Baby Citter, Hot Baby Citra. Not many people get that. That's a hard one.
I like it though.
Yeah, double Citra IPA.
What's double about it? As in kettle hops and dry hop, or what?
No, it's really just more alcohol.
Okay.
But try to keep the same balance as I scaled that up a little bit.
Nice.
Heavy on the Citra. So, it's pretty drinkable, but pretty strong.
I see, and I like the way that you think. So for people like we're talking about today, the basics of getting started, opener type tips, a double high alcohol, bigger grain, more hops kind of beer is probably not what I would recommend. I would say keep it simple and keep it kind of a sessionable beer, 5% or so, something like that. Is that just with what you're going to? Do you agree? Would you try to keep it simple and keep it low ABV at first, or would you try to get into these double dry hopped IPAs, etc.?
Nah, you know what? I mean, if you're starting off with a kit, right? It's pretty good. It's going to be determined for you, right? There's a lot of varieties in the stuff that you can find today. And if it's not a kit, you can find a basic extract recipe. Just find something on the web. There's all sorts of places you can find that. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend going big or low. Just find a recipe that works that you can make in your kitchen.
And I'll tell you this, folks, if you're looking at becoming a home brewer and you don't know where to start, go check out a site called Brewer's Friend or Brew Father. You can check any of those. There's a ton of basic recipes on there that you can get started with and see where you want to go. And it's just like Mike said, someplace that is a starting point. It doesn't mean you have to end there, but it's a great place to get started.
And your local homebrew store will have all sorts of recipes and resources for you as well.
As long as you have one, unlike me.
True. It's true.
Which my local homebrew store is now 5 minutes from your place and an hour from mine. So that's the way that works.
That's right. So back to tips, Ryan. What's your next tip?
My big one is, much like you were saying before, don't bite off more than you can chew. You want to make beer, especially if you're new at it, just go make beer. It doesn't have to be the thing that you fell in love with at X brewery that has been in business for 25 years and knows all kinds of outlandish things that they're trying to do. just make a simple pale ale if that's what you like. Make a simple Belgian blonde if that's what you like. But going back to your thing, make what you want to drink and just figure out how to get there from where you're at now.
Yep. Yep. We agree with that.
Okay. Well,
so,
hey, knock on wood.
All right. So here's a practical tip, right? So up to here, I think we've just been talking a little bit philosophically, but a practical tip for somebody that's brewing for the first time or just thinking about getting started is get organized and be prepared. So in the culinary world, you have, they call it mise en place, right? So everything in its place. The same principles apply to brewing, and it's pretty important, right? So you're going to have equipment, you got your tools, your utensils, and then you have your ingredients, and you've got a 4 to 6, maybe 7 or 8 hour brew day ahead of you, right? Be organized, have everything clean, have everything ready, have everything set out. If you're brewing regularly, have the same flow, right? Have everything in the same place each time, including having your ingredients measured out, ready to go. Nothing sucks worse than, needing your mash paddle and remembering that it's in your kitchen, and not clean or unsanitized, or,
right.
You have an ingredient to add and you haven't measured out your ingredients, right? Get everything laid out and be ready to go. Everything should be clean, set out. It makes your brew days so much more manageable and easier when you know where all your stuff is and it's ready.
Yeah. And I'm totally with you there. I always equate it to like, you're not going to go into, and for a lot of folks who might check this channel out on a whim because they're from Kansas City or they're Chiefs fans, you're not going to go into smoking a brisket for the first time without knowing what you're doing or having all your gear ready. You need to have the chips, you need to have the water, you have to have the deflector, you need to have it all prepped, rubbed, ready to go, right? Same thing with brewing. But my last one was the big one for me. You cannot be too sanitary. It doesn't hurt to clean things twice. If you have any inkling about something not being clean, and when we're talking clean in brewing, we're talking about washing it with soap and water. We're talking about using an actual sanitizer on top of that after you've gotten everything clean and then checking it. Sometimes I end up washing everything twice. Using brewery cleaner is a very popular way to make sure that your base clean is done on top of sanitizer, because folks, people will tell you to use sanitizer wherever you can. If you don't have the thing clean to begin with, sanitizer does you no good. That's
absolutely right. Brewing is 90% cleaning and 10% making beer. No joke. So funny thing, Ryan, that was my number one tip, right?
Oh, right.
Sanitize all the things and then sanitize them again.
Yeah.
Right. There's like a bug that gets into your beer. That's the one thing that'll kill it. That peanut butter sandwich, relax, don't worry, have a home brew.
Boil it
get that thing out. Yeah, boil it more. Right. I hope your sandwich is sanitized. But keep a bottle of sanitizer with you, right? I keep one with me all the time, even when I'm not brewing.
Oh, look at you with a prop. That was wicked smart. Oh, that's awesome.
I know. I'm telling you, that's number one. So
I gotta have one of those.
There's all sorts of pictures of me brewing, and I guarantee you will always find that bottle of sanitizer in a picture, right? Yeah. Absolutely. There's nothing more critical than that. Really, brewing is a lot of cleaning. It's a lot of sanitizing. When in doubt, spray your stuff down.
Because in the end, you're going to put it in your body, and more importantly, somebody else's body. So I have a bottle out by the fermenter that's in the garage. I have another bottle that's out by the Keyser in the basement. And then I have bottles to spray and sanitize everything in between from where it's stored. And storage is another thing that I hadn't thought about this until just now, but you want to make sure that you have a place that is not out in the shed out back where critters are crawling around on it and doing whatever they want. You want to keep your equipment in a place that you can maintain its cleanliness and honestly keep yourself from having to do a lot of extra work.
Absolutely. There you go.
So that's our 5 for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you are new to brewing, make sure you click the link below, get subbed, and we will have more on this. We're going to take steps forward. And if you missed that one, I'll link it up in the show notes for the basic brewing process and how things go when you're making beer. Thanks for being with me today, Mike.
Cheers.
Cheers to you, and we'll talk to you all next time.